Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the FDA stakeholder call regarding FDA's final guidance for sodium reduction targets for the food industry. My name is John Goodrich, and I'm a member of the FDA stakeholder engagement staff. In just a moment, I'll turn the call over to Acting FDA Commissioner, Dr. Janet Woodcock, and Dr. Susan Main, Director of the FDA's Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, for opening remarks. After the opening remarks, we'll then move on to a question and answer period. If you do have questions, please enter them into the Zoom chat in advance. That is located on the right side of your screen for most people. Please do be sure to include your name, organization, and email address. Once the Q&A portion of the call begins, I'll call on you individually and you'll be able to unmute yourself and ask the question. I do apologize in advance if we're unable to get to all of the questions due to the limited time we have on the call today. Before I pass it on to Dr. Woodcock, I would like to remind everyone that the call is being recorded, and please do make sure that you have yourself on mute at all times unless you've been called upon to ask a question. And with that, I'd like to introduce Acting FDA Commissioner, Dr. Janet Woodcock.
Thank you, and hello, folks. Thanks to you all for joining. Today is really a pivotal day for the health of our nation, as the FDA has announced a critical step in our efforts to reduce the burden of diet-related chronic disease and advance health equity. We as a nation face a growing epidemic of diet-related chronic diseases, such as cardiovascular disease, obesity, and diabetes, which disproportionately impact racial and ethnic minority groups. As a result, thousands of lives are lost and billions of dollars are spent in healthcare costs each year for these largely preventable illnesses. Unfortunately, we know that people with these diseases are also at increased risk for severe outcomes from COVID-19. We also know that limiting certain nutrients, as well, such as sodium in our diet, can play a huge role in helping to prevent diseases such as hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and so forth. The guidance we're issuing today seeks to directly address these problems head-on by providing voluntary short-term sodium reduction targets for food manufacturers, restaurants, and food service operators for 163 categories of processed, packaged, and prepared foods. The targets seek to decrease average sodium intake by 12% over the next 2.5 years. Now, as many of you may know, sodium plays a role in food technology and food safety. Therefore, we recognize this is not a change that will happen overnight. This will require an iterative approach that supports gradual reduction in sodium levels broadly across the food supply over time. This approach will also allow people's taste to adjust and result in better health outcomes for people in the US. Importantly, this approach has been designed in a way that no one company or one category of food is singled out or scrutinized. We're planning to reduce sodium broadly across the food supply. We recognize there's a lot of critical work that needs to be done to reduce diet-related chronic diseases, and we appreciate the efforts already underway by a number of organizations in the food industry. The FDA is also working closely with our federal partners on many nutrition-related efforts and exploring new ways to coordinate, leverage, and amplify each other's nutrition work. It's my hope that today's announcement will encourage others to also join in. If we can act together, we're confident we'll have a profound impact on the health of millions of people. Thank you. And now I'll turn to Dr. Main to discuss the guidance for sodium reduction targets in more detail. Dr. Main.
Thank you, Dr. Woodcock. It's a pleasure being here with all of you today. First, I'd like to reiterate that our goals to reduce sodium intake are critical to reduce certain diet-related chronic diseases, improve our health, and reduce healthcare costs. Reducing sodium across the food supply is a significant step in our efforts to achieve these goals by creating a healthier food supply. On average, people in the US consume 50% more than the recommended limit for sodium. This includes our youngest and our most vulnerable populations, with more than 95% of children aged 2 to 13 years old exceeding recommended limits of sodium for their age group, which can have profound impacts on later health outcomes. We recognize that cutting down on sodium in your diet is hard to do on your own, because about 70% of the sodium we eat comes from processed, packaged, and prepared foods, which makes it challenging. Therefore, the guidance we are announcing today recognizes that successful sodium reduction needs to take place across the overall food supply, making it easier for consumers to access lower sodium options and reduce sodium even in the absence of behavior change. The sodium reduction targets we are announcing seek to decrease average sodium intake from approximately 3,400 milligrams to 3,000 milligrams per day over the next 2.5 years. By reducing sodium by just 400 milligrams per day, that would mean the average person would consume roughly 60 teaspoons less table salt every year. Although the average intake would still be above the recommended limit of 2,300 milligrams per day for those age 14 and older, we know that even these modest reductions made slowly over the next few years will substantially decrease nutrition-related diseases, make for a healthier population overall, and lower the burden of healthcare costs in this country. We are recommending that the food industry implement these targets as quickly as possible in order to level the playing field across the food supply. We will continue our discussions with them as we monitor sodium content in the marketplace and evaluate our progress. Moving forward, we plan to issue subsequent targets to continue to lower the sodium content incrementally to further help reduce our sodium intake. We know that there will be questions as we go through this process together. We already have several consumer and media-related materials available on the FDA website, and we're planning webinars for our industry stakeholders and constituents. We will certainly keep you informed and will update you as progress continues to be made. At the FDA, we are strongly committed to our mission to reduce the burden of chronic disease through improved nutrition. Today's action is an important step in the FDA's broader efforts to address preventable diet-related chronic diseases and advance health equity that we hope will have a profound impact on the health of millions of people. I'd like to turn now back to the press conference back over to John, and we'll begin the question and answer portion of the call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Woodcock and Dr. Main. At this time, we'll start our question and answer portion of the call. Once again, if you would enter your questions into the chat along with your name and organization. In addition to Dr. Woodcock and Dr. Main, we've also asked Dr. Robin McKinnon, Senior Advisor for Nutrition Policy, and Ms. Casey Heinz, Nutrition Scientist, both of whom are from the FDA Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, to join us as well. And with that, I'd like to call on Ms. Kristen Campos from the Sustainable Food Policy Alliance to ask a question.
Thank you, John, and thank you to everyone in the FDA. I just wanted to, first of all, applaud you for the guidelines that have been released today, for the efforts the FDA is making at Mars Food, where I work. This is a huge step and a step in the right direction, and one that we take very seriously, and our game, we're moving it forward for sure. I wanted to ask, what are the actions that the FDA is going to take to enforce this, I think, in areas where it may be a little bit harder to enforce, in places like where there are food operators or in restaurants? What are going to be the new kind of standards there, and how will that be enforced?
I think I'll turn that over to Dr. Main.
Yeah, I can start and then my team can augment. These are voluntary targets. We know that many in industry will be working to meet these targets. We've heard that from many, including your company, so thank you for that support. But this is a journey we're on together, and one of the things we need to do is engage with our stakeholders, hear what challenges they're having, how are things going. It is going to be an iterative process. We know that reducing sodium in some commodities will be easier than in others, where there may be some more technical challenges. So we can continue our stakeholder engagement, monitoring what's happening, communicating where we are, and this will be a journey that we are all on together. And so I think that would be my initial response, and I can then open it to others on my team if they'd like to augment that.
I don't have anything to add. I don't know about you, Casey.
No, I think you covered it nicely, Dr. May.
No, I'll just say, we are going to try to figure out ways to recognize those groups that are doing the right thing and kind of on the positive side, okay, recognize those who are moving toward the targets or achieving the targets. We also would really like to activate the public. And we know people want healthier food, but many of them are unaware of what that might entail and how to choose that. And we hope that we can also augment that and get a lot of public impetus toward lower sodium once people understand the consequences. We think right now, I know from my own experience in talking to my, people I know, people seek out lower sodium food, but it's so confusing and there's so many choices and there may not be the choices they are looking for that, they're frustrated. So we hope, also, we would hope to work with our federal partners on federal buying power, all right, to leverage that as well. So I think there are a lot of levers we can pull and we just need to, as Susan said, pull them all because this is going to be hard, but I think we can get there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. We do have a couple of questions that have come in via email. The next one, how will FDA know if companies are following the recommendations? And we'll turn that to you, Dr. Main.
Sure.
Great, and my experts are my team who can describe to you some of the monitoring that we will be doing to see what's happening with products in the marketplace. So Robin or Casey?
Sure, this is Casey. Thanks for the question. And we do plan to evaluate and try to understand what's happening in the food supply to the best of our ability. We do have access to various databases, including food label databases on the packaged food side, as well as we've collected some of our own restaurant data, which we plan to continue to do. So with that, we plan to kind of explore what would make the best sense, considering we will continue the dialogue with industry over time and evaluate what we can with our resources, our data sources.
Yeah, so, and I'll just add, I mean, as Dr. Main mentioned, we'll be taking this iterative approach, continuing to evaluate, to monitor, to work with stakeholders, and then gradually, broadly across the food supply, bring the levels of sodium down, which we've seen has been successful in other countries who've taken a similar approach.
Thank you both for those answers. We do have a question from Maggie Simic, I believe is how you pronounce the name. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hi, so my question is, will this affect the guidelines or requirements for the nutrient content claims? So if a package were to call out low sodium currently, is this going to change those requirements in order to meet that nutrient content claim on labeling?
So I guess I'll start with that one. I don't have my experts from the Office of Nutrition and Food Labeling on to address that question. So I want to make sure we get a correct answer to you on that one. My guess is these are voluntary targets. And so my assumption would be no, but let's get a correct answer from our Office of Nutrition and Food Labeling, who are the experts, and they're unfortunately not on this call today.
Thank you for that. We have another question from Joel Berg. If you'd like to unmute yourself as well, I invite you to ask the question directly.
Hi, this is Joel Berg with Hunger Free America. As you know, you can have 3 containers of pretzels. Each to the human eye seems to have the same amount of pretzels, and yet one will have a portion size of the bag is everything in the bag, and one say a portion is a third of the bag, when humans will probably eat much of the bag. So I'm wondering, as you're addressing sodium content and other content, are you going to address particularly the rationality of the portion sizes and the labeling, because after all, people can't make informed consumer judgments if they really don't understand how much sodium they'd be eating. Thank you.
Right. I've turned that to Dr. Main again.
Yeah, I can start with that. Joel, I'd say the good news is that we made some really significant updates to the nutrition facts label with the final rule in 2016. And one of the changes that we made were for these products that could be consumed in one sitting, but were larger than the standard portion sizes. And portion sizes for nutrition facts labeling are defined in our regulations. So for example, if somebody was consuming, 2.5 servings in the bag, the math is actually done for the consumer based on our updated nutrition facts label, because we know that consumers can often consume that in one serving. So that is the big update that went into place. Compliance dates were in 2020 and 2021. So that math is done for consumers with those types of products that can be consumed in one serving.
I appreciate that. And I just say, I don't know what enforcement you have, but in my experience as a consumer, that's often not evident on packaging. And sometimes literally the packaging is folded over the label. So you almost need to buy it to actually read the label. So I know you guys have limited staff, but I urge you to think about not just issuing the regulations, but enforcing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Our next question also comes by email. What factors did the FDA consider in establishing these targets?
Again, I'll defer to the Center for Foods on that.
I can start, and my experts are here as well. I think one of the things that we've done is really use a data-driven approach, using data that we have on what's in the U.S. food supply. And so what we've done is looked at top-selling products in the market by different commodity categories. And what you see is a really, really striking range of variation, even within the same, commodity categories. And so what we see is that there's wide variation in sodium content. And what that tells us is some of those products that are much higher and that are very, very similar really do not need that much sodium in them. So it's been a data-driven approach based upon what we've seen in the U.S. marketplace to try to help bring the numbers down. And what you see is the variation is wider in certain foods than in others. Those are foods where we think there's greater potential for sodium reduction. For other commodity categories, you don't see that much variation, and it may not be as easy for them to reduce. So we did not take a one-size-fits-all approach. Rather, we used a data-driven approach to see where we can make reductions to help improve the healthfulness of the U.S. food supply. So my team can augment that response, but that's the high-level answer.
I might just add on, also in addition to that, we took into account the technical role that sodium plays in different food categories. And so in addition to the data-driven approach, seeing what is possible, as Dr. Main said, it wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach. So we made a uniform reduction. We're looking very carefully to see within the categories what was already selling well on the marketplace, given the wide range, and then given that sodium plays a role has antimicrobial properties, also plays a role in fermentation, in color development, texture, in addition to taste, and some other things. So we're taking all of those things into consideration when we're developing the targets for the different categories.
And I'll just add that in our approach to considering all of those factors, we scan the literature relative to food technology that might be pertinent to those categories. We consulted experts in the field, as well as carefully considering all of the comments that came into our docket, as well as from the public meeting that we held in the past.
Right, and also I'm working with other federal partners on different food commodities as well.
Thank you for that. Our next question, why are these sodium reduction targets voluntary and not mandatory?
Well, I'll start with that. Okay, this voluntary program gives us some flexibilities that are very important. Our rulemaking process is takes a long time, is very cumbersome, difficult to modify. We would like to take an iterative approach and actually ratchet these down every several years. At the end of the 2.5-year period, we hope we've gained enough information that we could ratchet the targets down, particularly in a number of food groups, so that we can get closer to the recommended total dietary intake for adults. Also, many countries are using a voluntary approach, which has been successful, and we want to emulate success. We know that many multinational corporations actually sell their products in these other markets where voluntary sodium reduction targets have already been put into place and may have gone through several iterations. And those products actually in those markets have lower sodium content. So we think overall, between the factors I mentioned before, the federal partners of power, we have a large group of industry that is very supportive of this, as we just heard. We have a lot of members of the public who are seeking healthier food and healthier diets. And, we can, I think together we can bring these down. We know it is feasible also to do this. So voluntary methods give us a lot of flexibility. And Dr. Main, do you have other thoughts on that?
I think you hit my highlights as well, Dr. Woodcock. So we're learning from what has worked around the globe, and voluntary is certainly the preferred approach that has been successful internationally.
Thank you all for that. Another question, why is the iterative approach so important? Can't this be done more quickly?
Well, let me give a layman's, and I'm not a food scientist, answer to that. We try to drop the sodium content really fast, and people will reject that. We know that people's taste will adjust to lower sodium, and as a gradual approach will allow people's preferences to go to lower sodium. But if we tried to make a huge drop, I think we would not be that successful in getting everything down. We wouldn't, we'd be confusing people's taste buds, and the whole effort might actually be a flop. So a giant change in behavior often is not the way to go with human behavior. We want to just lower the sodium in the food supply in a way that people don't even notice that, or can completely adjust to it. Dr. Main?
And I'd say, members of industry have been studying this for many years, and we've learned a lot from the stakeholder engagement we've had with industry about what types of decrements in sodium can they achieve without noticeable effects on the consumers. And I'm going to ask Dr. McKinnon to summarize some of that we have heard in some of the discussions from industry that, many in industry have been working to reduce sodium for quite some time, and there's a lot of lessons learned there. So Dr. McKinnon.
Yeah, we certainly heard there's been, certain companies have made tremendous investments in their sodium reduction work. And so depending on it's not across the board, but depending on the different commodity, up to about a 10% reduction, some consumers won't even really notice that. And so that's what we're aiming to do, just to get people to adjust and then slowly bring things down. But also we've heard that with very specific products, so we've also heard that it's easier for new products to come onto the market with lower sodium options, rather than something like an iconic brand or a product that people have a very specific expectation over. So it's going to vary, but with these new products, it's much easier to come onto the market with lower sodium. And then with some of the other products, slowly bring those down over time. I don't know if you want to add anything on, Casey.
I agree with all of those comments, and would just add that we do recognize that it will depend on the category and that you're thinking about. And we would just want to continue that dialogue to ensure that we can move in the right direction.
Yeah, and just getting back to the point that Dr. Main made earlier about the data-driven approach, where we've looked very carefully at all the different categories, and we can see a number of different products at different ranges of sodium concentration across the category. So we know that there are levels of sodium that range pretty widely that are acceptable to consumers. So all of that factors into this.
So following up on that, what if a company doesn't meet the recommended targets for sodium in food? So if a certain product does not have a significant change in their sodium levels, what can the FDA do to address that?
Well, you can be sure we'll be thinking about that over the next 2 years and how to figure that out. There are probably a number of ways that we can, either by recognizing the positive, the healthier options, or other things.
And also understanding the challenges, because as we continue to want to reduce sodium, this will not be our first round of targets.
Right.
We need to hear where those challenges are, and we need to make sure that we're aware of some of the challenges that industry is experiencing, because we really think this is an important partnership, that we are in this together. Consumers, industry, FDA, we all want this to be successful. And so really listening and hearing, what those challenges are as we move forward are going to be important. And Dr. Woodcock highlighted the importance of the voluntary approach. It does give us much greater flexibility. We may find that we can make more progress in certain categories more quickly, and we can accommodate that with future iterations of the targets. But it's going to be a really important engagement that we're going to need to do with the food industry to find out where they're having specific challenges in meeting our targets, and what more we can do from an FDA perspective to help facilitate their ability to make those changes.
Right, and I'll add on, as consumers' palates adjust and within categories, if slowly the sodium is being brought down, then certain products, if they haven't made changes, may be more noticeably salty for certain consumers. So there may be an additional incentive. Having these national standards allows everybody, from inside, outside government, consumer groups, everybody, to be able to assess progress. And then we have the additional effect of consumers' taste as well.
Thank you. Touching on Dr. Main's statement about this being a partnership amongst organizations, I wonder if anyone could speak to what type of efforts are underway with other federal partners, such as the Center for Disease Control, in terms of implementing both the guidance and improving the health status of our nation's citizens.
Yeah, there are many conversations underway, and I would say stay tuned because this isn't the only, nutrition-related problem in the United States that we need to take some action on. And we're working very closely with the Department of Agriculture, CDC, NIH, and all other involved federal agencies. So nutrition really needs to be in the spotlight.
And I'd say there's many other federal partners that have key programs in place to try to reduce hypertension and other diet-related chronic diseases. And these types of actions can really help them as they're moving forward in those communities to really address these problems of diet-related diseases. So getting the targets out, today's announcement is a really important first step. And now we can really, really continue to engage with our federal partners to see how that can help them in their efforts to improve the health of our population.
Great, thank you. Dr. Main, earlier you said that this isn't going to be the first round, or that this won't be the last round of targets. Can you say any more about the process of getting to those future targets?
Sure, I can start that answer. As we highlighted, and I highlighted in my statement, these are meant to support reduction down to 3,000 milligrams per day. But the upper limit for sodium for chronic disease risk reduction for adults is 2,300 milligrams per day. So this is important progress, but we're still over consuming sodium if we achieve the reduction that I spoke about, the 400 milligram per day reduction. So we believe that we can continue to make progress beyond that. It's important that we continue, but it has to be gradual and it has to be broad. So our anticipation is that we will be monitoring the progress, we'll be engaging with stakeholders, and then in the future, we will be wanting to issue another round of targets through an iterative process to continue to reduce intakes to get us closer to that upper limit that we have for sodium. And I will highlight some of the statistics are really, really quite remarkable, that sodium is overconsumed by all age groups across our population, and that goes down even to our children at ages 2 to 13. The vast majority of our children are way over consuming sodium compared to their age-specific limits. So we really want to address this. It's an important public health issue. This will get us partway there, but we want to continue to try to get us down to the intakes that we know can best support population health.
Terrific, thank you. Our next question comes from John O'Keefe. Mr. O'Keefe, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. I'm just wondering if you can comment on how much industry is focusing on salt replacements like potassium chloride and others. Do you think that'll play a big role in this at all, or I was just curious about that.
Dr. Main?
I think I heard most of the question. I think it was how much is industry focusing in on potassium chloride? And that might be best addressed by some of the industry members on the call. But what we have heard from industry is that potassium chloride is one tool that can be quite beneficial with regard to sodium reduction, that some of that sodium chloride or sodium in food could be replaced partially by potassium chloride. And so we understand that that is one key strategy that industry may be using to help reduce sodium. The other question I get about that is if we are adding potassium chloride, what does that mean in terms of the food supply? So I'll just note that potassium is a nutrient of public health significance. It is underconsumed in this country. And that's one of the reasons we mandated it for disclosure on the nutrition facts label with the updates that we made in 2016. So potassium will be declared, is being declared on packaged foods on the nutrition facts label. And as I just reiterate, as companies will reduce sodium, some may be incrementally increasing potassium, which again is an underconsumed nutrient in the US.
And Dr. May, maybe I can add on there that what we've heard is that potassium chloride is really, as you mentioned, a key tool in at least partially reducing sodium. It's certainly not a one-for-one replacement. It's hard to find anything that is an exact replacement for all the different functions that it provides, but it certainly is a very important partial replacement. And that's why just back in December, we issued a final guidance on an alternate name for potassium chloride to allow instead the name potassium salt. And that voluntary name may indicate to consumers that a potassium-based salt may be partially reducing some of the sodium in that particular product. And then also it may be encourage manufacturers to use some potassium chloride, some of this potassium salt to reduce the sodium in their particular product. So, and then that way, and with these different initiatives, getting back to part of the key thinking around our nutrition innovation strategies, giving consumers the information that they can use to make healthier decisions for themselves and their families, but also helping to do whatever we can to help foster innovation in industry to provide healthier products that we know that consumers are looking for. So those two things are dovetail very nicely, I think, this additional naming allowed, voluntary naming allowed on potassium chloride to help increase potentially, or it could increase potassium, which is a nutrient under consumed, and also potentially reduce our voluntary sodium guidance to help reduce sodium in processed, packaged, and prepared foods.
Terrific. Our next question is from Jay Welch. If you'd like to ask your question of the panel.
Yeah, thank you. I was aware of the announcement today and wondered.
Oh, I think we're having some audio problems. I do have it here that I can ask for you. How old is the data used to determine the sodium content of the food categories identified in Table 1 for sodium reduction?
I'll turn that over to my data expert from the center. So probably Casey would address that one.
Sure. Yeah, I think you asked how was the data utilized?
How old?
How old?
How
Okay.
old is the data that was
our
used in?
Our baseline data is representative of 2010. So if you dig into those documents, you'll find we actually had, just to mention it, a supplementary document when we put out the draft, which is still a reference in the docket folder that describes some of that methodology. And that data was representative of 2010 for both packaged and restaurant foods.
And so that was, and I want to underscore that that's intentionally, that was, we proposed in the draft guidance in 2016, we used 2010 as a baseline year from which to assess change. And we've retained that baseline year. So we're assessing change from 2010 and looking to reduce to make these targets from 2.5 years from now.
And I'll also add to that, that since the draft, since we've made these updates, we have reevaluated all of the categories and baselines because we did update some of the categories, which caused some of the baselines to shift, and we had access to a bit more data, which we were able to use to update all of these calculations.
And Casey, on the note of food categories, can you discuss a little bit how the sodium content for each category was determined?
Sure. Without going into too much detail, I think I mentioned earlier that we have access to certain proprietary databases that present food label data to us. So we'll have information on sodium from those sources. We also have sales data available to us. So on the packaged food side, we were able to link by UPC the sales data to the item level data for the packaged foods. And on the restaurant side, we don't have as granular level information relative to sales, but we take a similar process there. And for each of the categories, once the category is formulated, we'll create a sales weighted mean. So we'll apply that sales data, and that's why we're working with all of those data sets. And if you'd like to ask anything to clarify more, I can do and answer that.
I'll just add, there's a lot more information and linked in the guidance, in the supplementary memos, many layers of detail provided, available and linked from our website as well.
And one thing that might be helpful to just summarize too is when you're looking at the table that's presented in the guidance, we do present the category mean value as well as the upper bound. So we have the baseline category mean, the target for that category, which applies to the category as a whole, and the upper bound values applied to, in a sense, products, because we're hoping that no individual product would exceed that upper bound within that category.
Thank you both for that. And we are quickly approaching our end time. So with that, Dr. Main, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make?
I just say we do have a lot of materials on our website with in regard to today's action, which, as you heard, is really targets for industry that we're hoping industry to meet. But at the same time, we also think that it's important that consumers really start paying attention to sodium. I think that even looking at the targets would help educate people about the sodium variation across different foods. It's quite striking when you look at the actual data that we have. So we're hoping that consumers will take advantage of the many resources we have through the nutrition facts label, through the menu labeling regulations that require the chain restaurants provide additional nutrition information upon request. That includes sodium content in foods that are eaten away from home. So we hope that consumers will really pay attention to sodium. It's a very important public health issue. And today we're really kind of putting a spotlight on the importance of sodium and why we care about it at the FDA.
Thank you much. And Dr. Woodcock, any closing remarks from you?
Well, as I said earlier, at the FDA, we're really strongly committed to our mission to improve health equity in this country and improve health overall by addressing these preventable diet-related chronic diseases. And we really look forward to working with every one of you on this call to attain that goal. It's going to take us all together. Thank you.
And thank you to all of our panelists, as well as all of our attendees who asked questions. That will conclude our call today. For additional information regarding the new sodium reduction guidelines, you can visit the FDA website. There are a number of links available that will discuss all of the efforts underway. Also, if you have any follow-up questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to the FDA stakeholder engagement team. Our email address was on the invite that you hopefully received earlier. And with that, we'll thank you once again for joining us and wish you a good day.
Thanks.
Good. Thank you.